really hope I'm not the only one dealing with this. Hey guys, how's it going? So today I wanted to talk a little bit about a problem I've been noticing more and more with me in my reading, and that is forgetting what happens in books, especially in ongoing series. So I first really noticed this problem while reading these awesome books, the 39 Clues series. So this series is currently divided into 4 sub-series. You've got the Clue Hunt, which has 10 books, Heroes vs. Vesper, which has 6 books, Unstoppable, which has 4 books, and Double Cross, which has 4 books as well. Now, I got into this series when the Clue Hunt series, so the first one, was pretty much done, but before Heroes vs. Vespers had come out, or just as the first book was coming out. So I was able to read the 10 books in this series, yes I know I only have 3, pretty much one right after the other, and therefore was able to remember pretty much what had happened as I kept going. But then I caught up with the series. At first it wasn't really much of a problem because there is a team of authors behind these books, it's not just one author, and so Scholastic was able to put out about 2 or 3 a year, so there wasn't really a huge gap between them. Also, these books are pretty easy reads and they're not that thick, so there's not a huge amount that happens in any single one. Unlike, say, a Heroes of Olympus book, which is that thick and it's got a whole lot of stuff going on. But then by the time we got to the 3rd series, the more time passed, the more my reader scope had enlarged. I was more invested in more series because I had heard about more series, my TBR was growing, I was reading more kind of in general, so I had a lot more stuff going on in my noggin. So not only did I have 16 books of what had happened with 39 Clues, actually 17 because there was one book linking the Clue Hunt series and Heroes vs. Vespers. I had many more stories and books just tumbling around in my mind. So as I was reading the Unstoppable series, there were some things I noticed I wasn't really remembering. For instance, there were some new characters who were coming onto the scene and I couldn't quite remember how they had gotten onto the scene and how they were involved with the characters and how they had gotten to the point where they were. Such as if they were once an enemy and now a friend, I maybe didn't quite remember exactly how that had happened, how they went from enemy to friend. Also, a very big thing that was going on was that a lot of times the characters would remember an event that happened during the Clue Hunt or maybe during Heroes vs. Vespers. I couldn't quite remember that event happening at all, whatsoever. No. Which kind of scared me because a lot of those events are what cemented some character relationships and who was an ally and who was an enemy, and it was crazy. It got to the point where I was looking at some of the books from the Clue Hunt series and I could not remember what happened at all in those books. There were even characters I had completely forgotten about because maybe they died or maybe they just went off and did something else like halfway through and were no longer involved, and it was terrifying. So this series was really the beginning of me realizing that I had this problem of not remembering. Now, it doesn't happen with every single book that I ever read that is part of a series. One thing is that not every book I read is part of an ongoing series. Maybe it's already finished, so I'm able to read them semi-subsequently. And even if they are part of an ongoing series, maybe there have been enough books that are out that I was able to read semi-subsequently that I can fill in the gaps pretty easily when I pick up the next book in the series, and then I know I can remember enough by the time as it keeps going. But sometimes it gets pretty bad. For instance, Frozen Tides, the 4th book in the Fallen Kingdom series. Now, I was pretty excited for this book. I'm not going to say Fallen Kingdoms is one of my favorite series of all times, but I am really enjoying it. And I was really excited for the 4th book. I put my reserve in at the library and I was early enough that I got one of the brand new copies, which was pretty exciting as well. So, the book comes out. I go to the library, pick it up, come back home, sit down and open the cover and read the first 2 chapters. and I realized I could not remember a majority of what happened in books 2 and 3. So, I put the book down and I realized I had two options in front of me. One, I could plow forward and try and remember what had happened in books 2 and 3 as I was continuing, or two, I could put the book down for a little while, go to the library, and remind myself what happened in books 2 and 3. I really didn't want to force myself to read a book that I was pretty excited to read, knowing that I probably wouldn't enjoy it nearly as much because I couldn't remember what was going on. I had a couple of hours on my hands, so I put the book down, went to the library, and refreshed my memory on what was happening. I literally sat down with those two books, thankfully they were in at the library, with a notebook, took notes on what happened in those books. A lot of it was who died and how, but also a lot of major events and how they impacted the characters, because there is a big cast of characters and a lot happens to each and every one of them. That may have possibly explained why I was having trouble remembering, because there were new characters coming on and a lot was happening with the old characters, and it's a big awesome story, but it is pretty complicated and you do need to make sure that you are on top of things in order to remember how characters got to where they did, because lots happens, and yeah. And I am still using that notebook to take notes on series that I am reading that are ongoing. I totally understand that books, for the most part, come out only once a year. But unfortunately for someone like me who reads a lot, from October 22nd to October 25th of the subsequent year, I'm going to read a lot. So there are some details from when I read the book all the way back here that I am going to forget by the time I pick up the book the next year. A couple of series I'm currently taking notes on are Fallen Kingdoms, Throne of Glass. I'm only on book 3. I think that was also one reason I was forgetting things from both of those series, because they both have such a complex fantasy world, and I would read one and then after a little bit of time would get to the next book in the other series and I would be mixing up the worlds and it was a big mess. So yes, I also am taking notes on the Trials of Apollo series. I know it's not exactly a huge book, but there are so many books now in the Percy Jackson universe, and by the time I was hitting books 4 and 5 in Heroes of Olympus, I was really struggling with some of that remembering as well. So I am just starting off the bat, even if it doesn't seem like I'm gonna forget what happens in Trials of Apollo, I am just doing this to be on the safe side by the time the next book comes out. So I haven't been using this notebook method long enough to say if it's actually working, but I was wondering, do any of you guys have this problem? And if so, how do you deal with it? Like, do you look up summaries online? Do you look up videos of people talking about these books? Do you sit down yourself with the book and flip through it to refresh yourself? Or do you just go in cold hoping that you'll remember as you keep reading? Or do you just not have this problem at all and I might be going crazy? In any case, let me know down in the comments below. That would be awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day. Ciao!